Hi, welcome back, guys. This is your friend. Caller, what if with another fiction? What if the resurgence and revelation of Izuku Midoriya's quirks? Now, before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now, let's get into the fanfic. Not all humans are created equally. Izuku Midoriya found that out the hard way. Izuku was born quirkless and was bullied for being quirkless. He loved heroes but slowly started hating them. What made him realize he hated heroes is when the number one hero, All Might, told him he can't become a hero. His childhood best friend Katsuki Bakugo told him he can't become a hero and would bully and beat Izuku. Izuku started to hate his life. He was suicidal and would cut. Izuku never had the courage to kill himself. Not until today. He was in class when the teacher said, "Bakugo, you want to go to UA, right?" Then said, "Midoriya, you want to go too, right?" That's when Katsuki slammed his hands on the desk, and he looked pissed. Not putting entire conversation here. Katsuki said, "Hey Deku, why don't you take a swan dive off the roof and hope you get a quirk in the next life?" Little did Katsuki know that Izuku took his advice and finally had the courage to do it. Izuku finally had enough and made his way to the roof. He stood on the edge and finally took what seemed like his last steps. I had enough of my stupid life. Just because I was quirkless, I was pushed away like an outcast. I was bullied and treated like trash. It got even worse the older I got. I was constantly told I can't be a hero, but I kept on trying for some reason. But I lost all hope and stopped trying once the number one hero, All Might, told me I can't be one and pick something more realistic. That night, once in my room, I had torn every All Might poster and merchandise of the walls and positions on the shelves and threw them away. I even took the nameplate on my door off and threw it away. My mother asked if I was all right because of the noise I was making, and I said I was fine. After I was done, I went to bed without dinner. Time skip brought to you by Katsuki's meanness. I woke up not in the best mood. I hated the dream I had last night. And to be honest, it was more like a nightmare to me. To sum up, the dream was that I had seen my mother tortured and killed in front of me. To me, it felt too real. I got up and got dressed. I got downstairs and had a piece of toast for breakfast. I left the apartment with a piece of toast in my mouth. I ate it on the way to school. I arrived in class and took my seat. I sat quietly until 7th period when the teacher said something I was hoping he didn't say. "So Izuku, you want to go to UA too, right?" Right after he had said that, Katsuki had slammed his hands on my desk and looked pissed. Again, not writing the whole conversation. He then said before he left, "Hey Deku, why don't you take a swan dive off the roof of the school and hope that in your next life you get a quirk?" After he said that, I thought it over and thought that I'll take his advice. Now I'm on the roof of the school standing on the edge. I start to think why my life went wrong compared to the others around me. After a while of thinking, I took my final step. As I was falling to my death, my life flashed before my eyes. As soon as I hit the ground, everything went black. As puff. It finally went the way we needed it. I watched as the quirkless boy jumped off the roof and fell to his death. Little did he know that he wouldn't leave life that easily. Once he hit the ground, I told Kurogiri to take me and his bleeding, broken body back to Sensei. Once we were there, Sensei said, "Good work, Tamura." Then Sensei did his part. I felt pain everywhere, and I couldn't even move. I tried to open my eyes, and when I did, there was a bright light, so on instincts I shut them. I slowly opened them, this time to get them used to the light. I looked straight, and I was in a room that looked orange. As I looked around, I saw it looked like a lab. There was a table with straps on it for a human. Then next to it was a cart with needles and scalpels and other surgical items. The table with straps had dried blood. As I looked around, I thought of what I looked like right now, because I thought I had jumped on the roof like Kaken Katsuki suggested. When I looked down, I noticed I had an oxygen mask on my face. I had things connected and in my skin. I then thought of something. I was not in an orange room, but in a lab tube in neon orange liquid. Right after that thought, someone came barging in the room after slamming the metal door open and went to the cart of needles and other things. He picked up a syringe with something in it. He then walked over to the tube I was in and injected it into a tube that was connected to the lab tube. How to describe it, really everything started hurting and burning worse. Finally able to move a bit, I started twitching like crazy from the pain. The twitching might have startled the guy who injected it into the tube in the first place. I started to black out from the pain as the guy just stares at me. Tamira's Poff. Sensei told me to go inject something in that tube that the boy we captured was in. I walked to the lab room he was in and grabbed what syringe I was told to grab and walked over to the tube. I noticed the boy looked like he was awake. I grabbed the medicine tube that was connected to the tube that had medicine tubes connected to and in the boy's skin. Once injected, I watched for a second to see if there was a reaction, and surprisingly there was. The reaction caused me to jump slightly. The boy started twitching slightly, then slowly twitching worse. Sensei said that the twitch was a good reaction, I guess. After a little bit the twitching stopped and looked like he passed out. That shitty nerd has been missing for 2 days now. They found his blood on school grounds, but no sign of him and no blood trail. I was starting to think he might have taken my so-kind advice and jumped. Not only thought but believed it, and that scared me. I never really meant for him to jump. That was only to scare him so he'll stop trying to become a hero. Just after that thought I thought again, but shouldn't they have found his body then? Somewhere else in the world. Izuku's Poff. I woke up to hear voices. When I tried to open my eyes, I say nothing. In fact, I felt nothing at all. I started to move and get whatever was covering my eyes off. The voices in the room stopped and was replaced with silence. After what felt like 10 minutes of what felt like them staring at me, I heard movement. When I heard it coming closer to me, I struggled and thrashed around badly. I felt hands grab me to try and stop me. The person who was trying yelled for more help, and I heard the door fling open. As I was still struggling and thrashing, more hands grabbed me and held me still. Once they got me still, they took the blindfold off. I looked around and saw 3 people, 2 men, 1 woman to be exact. One guy had purple patches that were stitched on. The second had hands everywhere. I nicknamed him Handyman. The women had blonde buns and looked a little too insane. Finally someone talked, Handyman to be exact. So here is the conversation. H equals Handyman, D equals Deku Izuku. H, hey kid, what do you remember? D, why? H, answer the fucking question. D, nothing, why lying? 8. H, perfect, get up, we are leaving. Izuku sat there acting confused. He didn't think the villain would think he would fall for it so easily. He looked at him and then asked, where we going? Handyman looked pissed because I wasn't moving, but instead asking questions. Handyman started to yell, get your ass up, we are leaving to go to your dad. My dad? I'm lost in my thoughts after that conversation. One thought is, shouldn't I be dead? The other is my dad, but I haven't met my dad ever in my life. In the midst of my confusion, Handyman just picked me up because I wasn't moving from my spot. I wasn't snapped from my confusion till I was engulfed in blackness. It felt weird. Finally we came out, and we were in front of 2 men. One with a mask on his face that looked like it was giving him life support. The other man wasn't really seeable. He had a black hoodie on, and the hood was covering his face. The man with the mask started first. He said, hello Izuku Midoriya, my name is All for One, and I am the reason you're alive right now. That confused me, I replied. So I didn't die? No you did, but I used one of my quirks to revive you. So I am technically still dead. The man in the hoodie replied, yes. I started to ramble about how they revived me and the drawbacks of using that kind of quirk. Handyman chimed in, stop fucking rambling. To be honest, I forgot he was here. I finally started talking again with the men in the room and asked, so if you're one for all, then who is the man in the hood? Soon after the man replied, I am Hisashi Midoriya, or otherwise known as your father. Katsuki's puff. I finally have to go to school at UA. I have reminded myself that I am going to respect Deku. They still have found no trace of him and classified him as dead. I walked in the class 1A and walked to a desk and sat while putting my feet on the desk. Soon after, a shitty-looking extra ran over and started yelling at me to take my feet off the desk, and that it's disrespectful. The door opened and a girl with brown hair walked in, and the shitty extra ran over to her greeting her. Soon after, they started taking a guy who looked like a hobo came in. Sorry, Aizawa lovers, but the first appearance he did, he told us if we are here to make friends to leave. He then told us as we were in our seats that it took us 8 secs to quiet down, and continued on with some shit. Time skip brought to you by Aizawa's sleeping bag. We were outside and in the PE uniforms. We had to do some quirk evaluation test. I was told to take a softball and throw it with my quirk. It went 705.3 meters. Time skip brought to my laziness. Aizawa was talking about how in a couple of days we are going to the USG facility for rescue training. Sometime during him talking, he would yell at me because I was spacing out thinking about Deku and his case. I still feel guilty, and it won't come off my chest no matter what I do. I was thinking about the funeral we had for him. We buried an empty casket. Just the other day I was told to go check up on Auntie and Co., and was not happy with the result. I found her surrounded in blood on the ground dead. I called 911, and I was only brought to the thoughts of Izuku's disappearance again. This chapter is brought to you by Amando Ishii and Silvermoon 251 for asking and requesting me to update, and when I was gonna update. Izuku's puff. I was thinking about if he was really my father. He had taken his hood off. He had some things that did look like I may have inherited from him if he was my father. Not going to explain what cause no one really knows what his father really looks like. I had to act like I lost my memory for now, so I will act like believe him. So where are we going to go, father? We are going to go get you some quirks. I was excited, but I was scared what quirk I was going to get. I was also confused on how the thought I believed that this guy was my dad. We started walking through a long hallway. We stopped in front of an oak wood door. They opened the door and lightly pushed me in and told me to wait here with handyman, or as they said, Tamura. I looked around and the room was a bedroom with green and black like my hair. The bed was green with black blankets and green pillows. I asked handyman, "Hey handyman, whose room is this? First off, my name is Tamura, and second, it's your bedroom." They had a bedroom for me already. How were they planning to either kidnap me or revive me? After those thoughts, I thought if I already have a bedroom, they have no intention on letting me go home. After like 5 minutes of walking around, I started getting tired, so I walked to the bed. The thing that started creeping me out was Tamura was watching my every move. This is where I had to stop cause of me getting grounded yesterday. I just laid on the bed and fell asleep. Time skip brought to you by Tamura's meme face. 185. When I started to wake up, I felt someone pick me up off the bed. To be honest, the bed was comfy, and being carried by someone wasn't as comfy. I started to stir in the person's arms because I haven't opened my eyes. Third puff. The person had to tighten the grip he had on Izuku, so he wouldn't drop him and wake him up because he thought he was still sleeping. Izuku was trying to figure out who was carrying him just by the way they carried him and how they had their arms. Sadly, he couldn't tell. He slowly opened his eyes and saw that the man carrying him was the man that claimed to be his father. His so-called father looked down at him and saw he was awake. He didn't say anything, just looked forward after smiling. They finally reached their destination. It was a room that was like a lab. They started walking towards a table with straps. Izuku started to struggle and panic, scared of what will happen. He fought and fought, but the struggle was useless in the end. His so-called father, Korajiri, and Tamura got him on the table and strapped down. He looked at them with panic and fear in his eyes. He could tell they felt bad for Izuku, and felt even worse for what's coming next. Izuku would be yelling, but he had a muzzle on. Yes, a muzzle like Katsuki did at the sports festival. Any noise he made was just a muffled mess. His father came over and tried to calm him down while telling him it was okay, and he was sorry that he was going to be in pain. Izuku was confused why he would be in pain. Before he continued his thoughts, All for One came in. He was holding 2 syringes. He walked over to me and said, "This will hurt, but we'll give you your quirks." Wait a second, quirks. I thought they were only giving me one. He explained one of the quirks. The quirk was called Elemental Dragon Slayer. The next quirk was a quirk called Animal. After explaining what they are, he injected the stuff into me. It hurt like hell. Everything was burning and hurting. It felt like my muscles and bones were tearing apart. Every inch hurt. Every atom hurt, actually. I was trying to scream but couldn't. I soon saw my father come over and try to help, but nothing helped. I soon passed out from pain. Katsuki's puff. I had to go to that fucking hellhole again today. I'm not as loud as I normally am. After what happened with Izuku's mother, he was the only one on my mind. The hobo of a teacher came in and said that in 2 days we would be going to the USJ. Thanks for the reminder you told us yesterday, I yelled. I was tired of having Izuku on my mind. It only caused guilt. So to take it off, I'll just yell like always. Time skip, 'cause I'm a bad author. Izuku's puff. I woke up on my bed. I saw my father next to me. Why am I calling him my father even in my thoughts now? My so-called father woke up and set me awake. Before I could even register what was going on, he hugged me and asked if I was okay. That's a little far for someone pretending to be my father. Before even answering him, All for One came in and told me I needed training and knowing how to use my quirk in less than 2 days. What? How am I going to do that? Time skip. Again? Yes, I'm sorry. It has been 2 days, and I have been working my ass off. I don't know how, but I'm an expert now at hand-to-hand combat, and I have mastered my quirks. We were getting ready to attack the USJ. The question on your mind might be, why am I acting like a villain? Should Izuku stop breaking the 4th wall? The reason why is while we are attacking, or should I say them, I will escape. I was given a tuxedo that had a green tie and black gloves. But before we went to the USJ, I became an otter. Please don't ask why I sat on top of Tamura's head. At first he tried to get me off, but I grabbed his hair with my otter paws. He was trying to pull me off with one finger off of me. In the end, he gave up. He walked through the portal, and on the top of the steps by the entrance was the students and the pro heroes 13 and Eraserhead. While everyone was distracted, I ran. I jumped off Tamura and ran as fast as I could. I was weaving and dodging the villains that tried to grab me, cause Tamura yelled at them too. I got out of the crowd of villains and ran up the stairs. I got to the top and was already wrapped in a scarf or something. I was tired, so I didn't move. It was a lot harder to run as an otter than a human. The scarf was brought back to the pro hero Eraserhead. He stared at me for a moment while I was panting really hard. He handed me to one of the students. He had looked like a robot, but he was only in a costume, even I knew that. I just sat in his arms. He held me like I was going to try and escape. I wasn't planning on it, and I was still tired from running. I looked at Tamura, and he looked at me pissed. Eraserhead told 13 to evacuate the students. Kurogiri appeared and told them he won't allow them to leave. He then looked at me and said, "And you are coming back with us, Izuku, or your father will be pissed." All I did back was snarl and hiss at him. "What has gotten into you, Izuku? You were perfectly fine before we left, and now you're acting like this." I didn't want to go back to that place. Then Kurogiri tried teleporting us away places. The robot guy dodged and pulled 2 more people out with us. 13 tried attacking and told the robot guy to leave and go get help. He got up and I wrapped around his neck, but not choking him. He ran for the exit, but Kurogiri was catching up fast. A girl grabbed Kurogiri by the metal around his body and threw him. Once that happened, we got out, and he ran as fast as he could. All that ran through my head was, "Fuck this shit, I'm out," as he ran away from the building. I got sleepy on the way there and fell asleep. Izuku had finally gotten away from the villains, and he was sound asleep in the classroom of Class 1A. The class was in the room while the teachers were in a meeting to talk about the USCH incident and about the little otter that they now had. They were confused on why the otter had left the villains and show teeth and had aggression toward the villains. The teachers also didn't know who was going to take care of him for the week. They will not be here because of the attack. They thought that if the otter could be smart enough, he can choose who would take care of him for the week. Once this matter is solved, the teachers will send the students home for a week. While the teachers were talking, the students were watching the sleeping otter. The sleeping otter slowly started to wake. When the little otter woke up halfway, he gave out a tiny yawn while stretching out its muscles. The students, well, most of them, gave out an awe in response of the little otter's cuteness. The sudden noise scared the otter. He soon realized that he was safely away from the villains. While Izuku studied, the students, Todoroki had came up to him and felt for a collar which he had found. The collar's tag had said the little otter's name was Izuku. The tag also said, "If found, return me to random bar." Todoroki read the tag out loud. Katsuki heard the name and started thinking of Deku. When Todoroki went to leave, Izuku jumped off the desk onto Todoroki's shoulder. He climbed on top of Todoroki's head and laid down. Izuku looked around at the rest of the students while Todoroki stood still cause he didn't know what to do. After looking at most of the students, Izuku noticed one that stood out to him. Katsuki. He dashed off Todoroki's head as gentle as he could. He ran to Katsuki, who looked like he was trapped in his thoughts. He jumped up on Katsuki's lap and wrapped around his neck. Katsuki was snapped out of his thoughts and felt the little otter wrapped around his neck. Todoroki went to go get the teachers to show them what he found. Katsuki, on the other hand, felt like he was with Deku, or should I say Izuku Midoriya. Little did he know he actually was. Katsuki had started to pet Izuku, which Izuku purred towards that action. While Katsuki was gently petting Izuku, the teachers were surprised at the sight of a gently Bakugo. He then realized that everyone was watching him, and he automatically started yelling. "What the fuck you looking at, huh?" Izuku flinched at first, then put his paws on his ears. He started whimpering and shaking. Katsuki stopped in the middle of him, yelling, "You fucking extra." He started to pet Izuku to calm him down, whispering "Sorry, Izuku" multiple times. Izuku started to calm down as the teachers just watched. They had figured out who was going to take care of the little Izuku. The teacher pro hero Eraserhead had spoken to the class and told them school was out for a week. They also told Katsuki that he would take care of Izuku the otter. While the teachers were telling Kachin how to take care of me, I had fallen asleep. I wasn't in a secure position, so I started to fall. I had awakened from falling, but was caught by Kachin. Everyone was wide-eyed, and the same for me. Kachin grabbed some blankets from one of the teachers and wrapped me in them. I was still startled from the fall. After a minute, I relaxed into the blankets and fell asleep. Katsuki's paw. The teachers were telling me how to take care of Izuku. Izuku started to fall asleep, but wasn't in a secure position and started to fall. I rushed and caught him before he hit the floor. Everyone was wide-eyed, including me and Izuku. The teachers were holding blankets, so I took them and wrapped them around Izuku. It took a minute for him to relax. I felt bad for him getting startled. Time skip. I had brought Izuku the otter home and was going to go make him a meal for dinner. I was going to change when Izuku started to wake up. He yawned and stretched quietly. I picked him up and took him to the kitchen. I put him on the counter. I grabbed some raw fish. I brought the fish to him and tried. The little otter just refused. Otters eat fish though. I then thought of cooking the fish for him. I walked to the stove and grabbed a pan. Little Izuku scampered over from the other side of the counter. He was watching me while I was cooking the fish. After the fish was done and cooled, I gave it to him. After he finished the fish, I picked him up and brought him upstairs to go to bed. When I placed him down, he ran to the center of the room. Izuku's paw. I had just had dinner, which was cooked fish. Kachin had brought me upstairs for bed. Once in the room, I had decided that I was going to show him whom the little otter really was. I jumped out of his arms and ran to the center of the room. I looked at him, ready to activate my quirk. He watched me confused. I activated my quirk and became human in a tuxedo with a green tie. Once I finished the light my quirk creates disappeared. His eyes widened before he tackled me. When he looked up at me with tears in his eyes, I started to panic. I didn't mean to make him cry. I sat up as he got off me. His mother came running up the stairs from her bedroom. She came in the room yelling, "WTF was that?" When she didn't see Kachin standing, she looked down. She at first only saw her son, but saw me soon after. She tackled me just like Kachin did. When she looked up, she didn't only have tears in her eyes, but on her face as well. She suddenly asked in a very quiet whisper that I almost couldn't hear it, "Where have you been? Why didn't you come back sooner?" It could have saved her. The last part she mumbled to the point I had to use my quirks to enhance my hearing more. I then answered her questions and asked one of my own. I was trapped by villains. I could leave because I was watched 247. The only reason I am here is because I got them to trust me to go with them on an attack at the UA. I ran when we got there and got into the hero's custody. Also, who could I have saved? When I said the last part, they looked at me with sadness, pity, and regret in their eyes. Not just Kachin's mother, but Kachin as well. Kachin spoke, and when he did it felt like time slowed down. "Izuku, while you were trapped your mother committed suicide." My world had shattered. When I looked away, Kachin started to say, "I'm sorry, Izuku," and how he was too late. But he was cut off by me. I started to whisper, "It's all my fault," multiple times, slowly getting louder till I drowned out everything with my screams as I was cry a lot. In the midst of screaming and crying with my eyes closed, Kachin and his mother had hugged me. The both pulled me close to them, telling me it was okay. Once I finally calmed down, we went to bed. The whole time Kachin was hugging me like he was gonna lose me. Time skipped 7 days, sorry, I am just lazy dummy. Kachin got up and gave me a uniform in my size. When the school first sent him a uniform, it was too small and Deku's size, so they just sent a bigger size, and never took the other one back. The only bad thing was we still haven't been able to get the collar off. To make it easier to go to wherever we are going, I turned into a baby-sized dragon and laid on his shoulders. So cute, I loved this picture when I saw it. So cute, I loved this picture when I saw it. We went to the train station, and I made myself lay in a secure position. When we got on, and some people looked at me strange. They have probably never had seen a dragon before. After the train ride, which made me sick, but I held it in. Once we got off, I flew to the closest garbage can where I belong and puked. After puking, Kachin picked me up and placed me on his shoulders and kept on walking. When he finally got to the school, he headed to class. When he entered, everyone was in awe when they saw he showed up with a little dragon on his shoulder. Kirishima asked him where I was, but what I meant was me in my otter form. His dragon form is from his nature dragon slayer quirk, not his animal quirk. Kachin just forgot that he was the only one besides his mother that knew I was human. He knew that at this point I would have to explain. I flew off his shoulder and landed on the floor, everyone watching, including the teacher. No one had noticed. I had shifted to my human form and looked at everyone. They looked so confused, so I shifted to my otter form to make things a little easier. While I shifted back into my baby dragon form, I flew and laid on Kachin's head. He was pissed at me for it. He ripped me off his head and shoved me into the candy cane-haired boy's arms. He started explaining how me and him were childhood friends. He then explained that I was kidnapped by the villains, and they gave me quirks due to me being quirkless. A kid in the crowd asked if I was a Namu technically due to the multiple quirks. Well, I would say yay, I technically would. But I couldn't, I was a dragon at the moment. Kachin also yelled at the kid for calling me a Namu after them see the last Namu they encountered. I just sat there awkwardly in the candy cane's arms. Their teacher finally got up and interrupted the class, and told the class that hour 1 will begin soon. Everyone got in their seats for class. I was still with the candy cane boy. I was on his head watching the teacher. The teach whom was a racerhead looked at me, but kept on talking about a sports festival. I got bored of listening, so I drifted off. When I woke up, I wasn't on the candy cane boy's head anymore. I was sitting on the front desk. I looked around to see no one in the room but Eraserhead. When he saw me looking at him, he got up. He started waking over to me, picked me up, and sat me on the ground. He used his quirk, so I reverted to a human. I started to get scared, and was about to run when Eraserhead grabbed me with his capture item. He pulled me to him and looked me in the eye. What really happened with the villains? He asked me. I started to fidget just thinking about it. I looked down from Eraserhead and explained everything from the beginning, from the jump off the roof to the Usk attack. Little did I know the entire time Kachin was listening. I told Eraserhead about how I was about to explain to Kachin what had truly happened, but his mother was there, and I didn't want to upset her. After I finished explaining, Kachin busted through the door screaming at the top of his lungs. That's what you meant when you said it was your fault. I flinched and started to struggle against Eraserhead's capture item as Kachin got closer. The one and only Eraserhead released me and restrained Kachin because of the attack he was going to do. He then started to scream. It's not your fault. If it's anyone's fault, it's mine, not yours, Deku. Eraserhead was in between us, confused. He then demanded for us to explain what we were screaming about. Kachin looked at me with pure, and when I say pure, I mean pure sadness and regret. Before anyone could react, I had become a baby dragon and flew out the window to the roof. When I had landed, I was already crying my little dragon tears. I didn't even notice that there were people or a person sitting on the roof eating lunch when I landed. I landed rough, and that was the only reason why they had noticed me. One came up behind me while I was crying and picked me up. When they picked me up and I struggled, they started to try and calm me down. In the middle of calming me down, him and me both noticed blood on the ground. I was surprised that he wasn't freaking out about a baby dragon bleeding in his arms. He walked back over to where he was eating alone. He grabbed a bandage from his bag, but I was still faced away from him. He turned me around, and when I looked at him, he looked think this. I think he might be from the general ed class. He started wrapping my front paw, which was bleeding from the landing. He could probably tell I was crying. After wrapping my paw, he lifted me up into his lap. He grabbed some meat from his lunch and feed me it. After me snuggling and sitting in his lap, while he talked to me like I was his best friend. After I thought that he said, "You're like my best and only friend." Once he said that, I felt bad and snuggled and nuzzled him. After he gave out a short laugh, the door to the roof slammed open. Kachin came out looking pissed and worried. Not far behind him was Eraserhead. When he spotted me and the guy that helped me, he stomped over. Deku, why the fuck did you fly away? I know it was a touchy subject, but I could have helped you. I flinched when he yelled. My dragon ears are sensitive. The guy holding me just ignored Kachin and walked over to Eraserhead and started talking to him. Eraserhead, do you know where this little guy came from? He asked. Yeah, he was with Hothead over there, but in a conversation between us we hit a touchy subject, and he flew away probably crying. Eraserhead had replied, Shinzo, why don't you keep Izuku with you for a couple of class periods to let him cool off from Hothead? Eraserhead had added. So the guy's name is Shinzo. Sure, he's good company anyway. Shinzo replied. Kachin did not like that idea. Hey, don't take Deku without asking me first. Eraserhead used his capture item and dragged Kachin away. Once the bell for lunch rang, I laid on Shinso's shoulder as he went to class. When he got to class, everyone looked at him weird. A group of kids got up and started bullying him. I was not going to have that. I flew off his shoulder and did a nature dragon roar. The kids were entangled in vines and branches, but couldn't get out. I landed back on his shoulders and roar a baby dragon roar at them as a warning, but not as another attack. We left them there so the teachers to deal with. When the teachers came in and say the mess, they were confused and didn't have any students with a quirk to do that. They scanned the students, then noticed me on Shinso's shoulders. They called Shinso out the classroom and to follow them. In the middle of walking to where we were planning on going, we were attacked in the middle of the school. It was the four I will always fear. I quickly became an otter before they saw. Shinso was confused on the used-to-be dragon, otter that was now on his shoulder. He had no time to think about that, nor did I. All I had to worry about was the four in front of me. They were all for one: Dad, Tamira, and Kurogiri. Dad was holding a reinforced cage, probably for me. The teachers were fighting all for one: Tamira, and partly Dad. Shinso held me in his arms protectively. There was only one problem. Tamira and all for one was distracting the teachers that they didn't notice Dad and Kurogiri weren't there. Next thing I know is Shinso is knocked out, and I am trapped in the cage. Dad grabbed the cage and Shinso, then yelled to Tamura and all for one that they had caught me and got Shinso too. Kurogiri then took us to their hideout. Dad carried me to the bar and placed my cage down. Dad waited till Kurogiri brought the restraining chair. Once they put it in place, they placed Shinso and restrained him as well. He even had a muzzle. When they were done with Shinso, they turned to me. Dad came forward first and asked, "Why did you run away, my son? Did we not love you enough?" How am I supposed to reply as an animal? They grabbed a bulky collar and placed it around my neck. "Now answer my question," Dad demanded. I replied with, "I got enough love, but didn't have enough freedom, and I had too much training." I pouted to make it look like I like them. "What do you mean not enough freedom?" Dad asked. "Like doing what I want to do for more than 5 min, more like a few hours, and not training for 2 days straight." I replied like it was obvious. "Also, there is nothing fun to do here. Maybe you need to get something to do that's fun." I added, "I wish the heroes would just come save us already, and it hasn't even been 30 minutes yet." They took the collar off, but left me in the cage while they went to do something. I got tired, and this cage was uncomfortable as an otter. I shifted to my dragon for again. Just a reminder of what the dragon form looks like. But anyway, it's so cute, Just a reminder of what the dragon form looks like. But anyway, it's so cute, I was about to fall asleep when Dad came back in. He walked to the cage and was surprised by my different form. The villains have only seen Izuku as a dog, cat, mouse, bird, otter, and guinea pig. His father picked him up and made sure to grab Izuku so that his wings were against him. His father carried him to another room. When they entered, it was the bedroom they gave him. Everyone was in the bedroom setting something up somewhere besides All for One. All for One was on Izuku's desk chair. "So little Izuku has a new form. Is there anything else you would like, Izuku?" All for One asked. When he talked about my new form, everyone looked at me. My dad placed the collar on my neck again. "May I request that Shinso stays in my room with me with the same freedoms, please?" I asked. All for One surprisingly agreed to the request. Once everything they were setting up was done, they left after bringing the still sleeping Shinso in onto the bed. I was looking around the room to see a large TV with game consoles and games for them. I laid down next to Shinso and fell asleep. While Shinso was sleeping, I was flying around my room and checking everything out. Not only was there the TV and game consoles, but perches for me to sit on, and in the corner was a bed for my dragon form. The bed was hanging from the ceiling. There were books and board games on bookshelves also. When I landed and laid in the bed hanging on the ceiling, I could see the whole room. If Shinso was uncomfortable sharing my original bed, I'll just sleep here. I was starting to fall asleep when my bedroom door opened. Dad had walked in, and I could tell was looking for me. I just sat there watching him. When he finally spotted me, he headed for where I am. When he got to me, he reached up and grabbed me out of the bed. I did a dragon grumble because the bed was comfy. He laughed and asked, "I someone enjoying their new things. Izuku, do you want some dinner? We can bring Shinso back dinner too." All I did was nod. I wanted McDonald's. Anyone know what anime that's from? I wanted McDonald's. Anyone know what anime that's from? But I didn't know what Shinso wanted. I looked at Dad and flew out of his arms. He reached out to grab me, but I was too quick. I landed on the bed Shinso is on and tried to wake him up. When I say try, I mean try. He grabbed me in his arms and flipped over. I was laying on my back with my tail in between my legs, blocking my penis. I am not afraid to say it, my wings were tucked to my side. I looked at Dad with a help me look. He just laughed at me for the way I was laying. The whole time he was laughing, I gave him a fuck you look. He finally came over to help me. He started shaking Shinso, which in return was shaking me. After what felt like forever of shaking, Father finally got Shinso to wake up. When Shinso woke up, he was half asleep. He sat up, still hugging me, but with only one arm. He rubbed his eyes with his free hand. Once he was done, he looked at Dad and started to back up till he was against the head of the bed. He still hasn't realized that he was holding me in his arms. Father then told Shinso, "Shinso, you're okay, we just woke you up so we can go get dinner." Shinso looked so confused. Izuku had asked for you to stay with him instead of being strapped to a chair and maybe experimented on. Shinso looked less confused. Shinso looked down to see what he was holding and saw my dragon form. Just a reminder of what it looks like. And because I wanted it here, W looking up at him. Just a reminder of what it looks like. And because I wanted it here, W looking up at him. When I was looking up, I had to be careful of my horns, so I didn't stab him. He got off the bed, but was watching Dad. He held me tighter when Dad walked over and held his shoulder. Dad then asked, "What would you like for dinner?" because I'm guessing Izuku want McDonald's. I nod when he says that due to both of them looking at me. I am fine with McDonald's if that's what Izuku wants. We left my room and headed to the bar. Once we got to the bar, everyone looked at us. Dad explained that he was going to McDonald's for dinner and asked if anyone wanted anything. Someone just wanted a cheeseburger and a small fry, the only thing I get whenever I go to McDonald's. When we left the building, they started walking to a car. I started to wiggle and squirm in Shinso's arms. Dad noticed and laughed at me. "Does someone get motion sickness?" I fired a mini fireball at him. He dodged and laughed even more. Shinso started laughing also. I managed to get out of his arms and flew to the door of the bar. Right when I got to the door, Tamura opened the door to leave. Once the door opened, I flew in as fast as I could to my room. I flew into my room and sat in my bed. I pouted and had my back toward the entrance. I heard someone walk in. Next thing I know is someone was holding me by my scruff and carried me to the bar. The whole time I was trying to scratch him and bite him. The guy holding me was a pissed Tamura. Once we got to the bar, he threw me at someone. The person who caught me was Dad. "Sorry, Izuku, for making fun of you. I should have known better," Dad said, trying not to laugh. Shinso too was trying not to laugh. All I did was pout as he carried me to the car. Once we got back from the car ride, which made me want to puke, Dad carried me to the bar. Once at the bar, I crawled to the garbage can and puked. Kurogiri, Tamura, and all for one looked confused. Dad explained about my motion sickness. The three started to laugh, and again, I flew away, but this time out of the building. I flew till I reached a place that was familiar to me. It was the park that Kachin and me used to play at when we were kids. It was also like 8 at night and dark out. I sat down and made a little flame in front of me. Exactly like this picture, And I know what you are think, Dogmaster, why the same picture so many times well, because this suited the scene. And that's the cutest dragon picture I could find. Exactly like this picture. And I know what you are think, Dogmaster, why the same picture so many times well, because this suited the scene. And that's the cutest dragon picture I could find. I was starting to get cold when someone grabbed my neck. They threw me to the ground, then kicked me. They grabbed me again and punched me. After punching me, they grabbed my right arm and snapped it. I tried scratching and biting them, but they threw me again. When I hit the ground, I felt one of my wings snap. They grabbed my neck, and I didn't move. They laughed and dropped my limp body. When they dropped me, I landed roughly on my left leg and broke that too. In the end, I was laying there limp with a broken arm, leg, and wing. I had sprained my right leg and sprained my tail also. They walked away still laughing. A puddle of blood started to form under me. By the time I heard some coming due to my dragon cries, I was losing consciousness. I heard a gasp, and then I was out. I woke up to a bright light in my eyes. Pain was everywhere on me. I went to open my eyes again, but this time slowly. Once adjusted to the light, I looked around the room. I noticed something instantly. I was in a hospital. I was also still a dragon. Out of my 4 limbs, 34 were wrapped or casted. My tail was wrapped. My wing was casted also. I could feel the bruises and cuts from getting kicked and punched. I was in a room that looked like an emergency room. Was I in that critical of a condition? I was trying to just fall asleep again when doctors came into the room. I looked up at them, and they looked at me surprised. They started talking to each other, then 2 left. Once the 2 came back, they brought 4 people with them too. The 4 were the ones and only Eraserhead, All Might, Todoroki, and Kachin. When they saw the condition I was in, everyone but Todoroki gasped. The 3 asked the doctors what happened, and the doctors told them to ask Todoroki. Kachin then yelled, "Why ask that half and half bastard? Did he do this?" He looked pissed too. They all looked at him for an explanation. He explained how he found me lying in a puddle of my own blood, crying out for help, barely awake. So they don't really understand what happened. The doctors asked who I was and who I belonged to. Eraserhead had answered and told them I was Izuku Midoriya, and that I was human with a quirk to shape shift. The doctors looked like they didn't believe him, so I went into my puppy form. They stared at me with awe. After they finally believed them, I shifted back, which hurt like hell. I started to get up, but the doctors rushed at me and made me lay down again. They could tell I was irritated. They explained to the heroes that I had to be with someone at all times and was not allowed to walk or get up on my own. They stressed for them to not let me use my injured limbs. If the heroes didn't think they can do that, I would be forced to stay here. In the end, they took me with. All Might was holding me due to the 2 children fighting on whom was going to carry me. All Might and Eraserhead were talking about whom would watch me each week, and they decided only the teachers would. When we got to the school, the support team gave me a light collar that allowed me to speak. I explained how my father, All for One, Tamura, and Kurogiri attacked me, Shinso, and some teachers. They took us and returned to their base. I made a deal with them so Shinso would stay okay. They were making fun of me, so I flew out of the building and ended up at the park that me and Kachin played at when we were kids. I also explained what happened to cause my injuries. After the long explanation, All Might brought me to his class because he had to teach at this time. When we walked in, everyone gasped besides Todoroki and Kachin. All Might carefully placed me on the desk. He told the class that they had a training camp in a couple of weeks. They already had the sports festival. All Might ignored all the questions on what happened to me. While All Might was busy teaching, I was trying to get up. Todoroki and Kachin both yelled at me no, and got All Might's attention towards me. All Might picked me up and held me in a position so I couldn't get up and wouldn't injure me and my broken bones more. I got so bored of just sitting there that I eventually fell asleep. I woke up to movement. I was in Eraserhead's arms, and he was walking somewhere. I tried to shift into a more comfortable position, but stopped when I felt pain. Eraserhead arrived at his destination. He walked into the room, and it looked like the infirmary. He handed me to an old lady and went to go sit down. The old lady placed me on the bed and grabbed supplies. Before she applied the supplies, she kissed me, and it made me feel a lot better. I may have felt better, but I also felt extremely tired too. I managed to stay awake the whole time. She took my cast off to check my bones. Still broken, but way better than before. My bones were almost shattered before she kissed me. She recasted my leg, arm, and wing. She unwrapped my tail and leg and checked them. She didn't need to do anything else after that, so she handed me to Eraserhead. Once in Eraserhead's arms, I fell asleep. I woke up and was in a different spot again. This time I was with Kirishima, I think his name was. I thought I was only going to be with the teachers. Wait, that's not the worst of my problems. When Kachin saw I was awake, he grabbed me from Kirishima and held my head above a plastic bag. Kirishima flipped out and kept telling Kachin to stop. It was cut short by me puking into the bag. Kachin looked up and said, "Everyone say his soft side." He then explained how I have motion sickness. It took a while and a lot of me puking till we got there. Once we got there, Eraserhead took me. He got back on the bus and grabbed a new plastic bag. We arrived at the camp this time, and he took me to the nurse of the camp. He uncasted my limbs and checked them. He ended up giving me the all clear. We then joined the Pussycats and waited for the students. While waiting for the students, I tried standing up. I ended up falling like a newborn. I saw everyone watching me. I tried again and held myself up for about a minute before falling again. I was getting upset, so I tried flying. I flapped my wings, but fell on my side due to my unbalance of muscle. Eraserhead could tell I soon would get pissy if I couldn't stand or fly. I tried again and finally got airborne. I flew around like no tomorrow. I landed and stayed standing. I was happy, so I tried walking. It was wobbly at first, but I managed. By the time I got a hang of everything again, the students finally arrived. Once the students came to the camp, Katsuki grabbed Deku. At first it startled Deku, and he struggled. After seeing it was just Kachin, he stopped. The Pussycats announced it was dinner, and it was the only time they would make. While they were talking, Izuku saw a little boy. He had an upset face on. Katsuki let go of Izuku a little now that he wasn't struggling. Once that happened, Deku flew out of Kachin's arms and landed in front of the kid. He surprised the kid at first, but that didn't stop him from what he did next. He climbed onto his shoulders and laid down. He snuggled into the kid's neck. Ida walked up to the kid and introduced himself. For the reply from the kid, he received a low blow to where the sun doesn't shine. The kid ran off with Izuku still on his shoulders. Katsuki watched as the kid took off. He followed slowly with 3 plates of food. Once the kid got to an area that was like a cliff, he stopped. Izuku jumped off his shoulders carefully. Once off, the kid grabbed and hugged him. Izuku could tell the kid needed to get some stress out, and knew he was going to start talking about it. Soon after that thought, the kid did start to talk, and at one point even mentioned his parents that had died. After he finished speaking, Katsuki came out. He acted like he heard nothing of what he just said, but in reality he heard it all. Katsuki handed the kid, who said his name was Koda, a plate of food. Koda asked why he had 3 plates of food. Izuku's puff. Katsuki looked at me and told me I needed to eat. I nodded. Koda looked confused. I shifted to my human form. I was wearing this. I sat down as Kachin handed me the food. Koda looked so surprised. I looked at Koda and explained my quirks before eating my food. After eating my food, I explained to Koda how I got my quirks, how I escaped, how the villains got me again, and how I got away and injured. After that, I told him I slept for 7 days, and that I woke up on the bus ride here. After we all finished eating, I turned into an otter and fell asleep in Katsuki's arms. and fell asleep in Katsuki's arms. I woke up in Aizawa's arms as he watched the students train. Wait, I slept the entire night. I am not gonna be able to sleep tonight. I sat in Aizawa's arms till he noticed I was awake. He put me on the ground. I shifted to my dragon form so I wasn't as vulnerable. After shifting, I looked at Aizawa in confusion. He just looked at me. I sat down next to Aizawa. Time skip. It was night, and the Pussycats was having the students play a bravery game. It was night, and the Pussycats was having the students play a bravery game. But the game was cut short as villains attacked. I flew off to find Koda because Pixie Bob could see him anywhere. I flew to where we ate that first night. When I got there, I saw a muscular guy cornering him. I flew in front of him and shifted to a larger version of my dragon form. At first he was surprised, but then smiled. "Ah, Izuku, you made it easy to find you. Now come along quietly so I can kill this kid and go get the Bakugo kid." That pissed me off. I roared a loud roar and prepared to attack. "If that's how you're gonna play it, then fine." He lunged at me. I grabbed Koda and pushed him out of the way. I got hit hard enough to break scales on my body. I had trees and vines wrap around him as I was signaling Koda to run. He ran as I stood my ground. Once the guy got free, he charged at me again. This time I flew up and shot fire at him. He grabbed my tail and threw me to the ground. I got up and flew at him. I bit him and wrapped him in the toughest plant I could think of. It worked. I was exhausted, but kept going. I flew off to look for Koda. I found him with Aizawa. When I tried to land, I collapsed. I stood up wobbly and looked at Aizawa. Koda and Aizawa looked at my terrible state. Before either could say a word, I gave out a tiny roar and then took off. Aizawa yelled for me to stop, but I didn't listen. I landed by the Pussycats. They started to yell at me that my injuries were too bad, but I had to find Bakugo. I started running toward a different direction. I smelt him in that direction. I was about to take off, but a knife went in front of my face. "Don't hit him, we need him alive, Spinner," the villain with a magnet-type thing yelled. I ran off to find Kachin. I found him in the middle of a fight with a villain with razor teeth. Once he saw me, he yelled, "Deku, get out of here, you're too injured." I just tried to get to him, but Tokoyama and Dark Shadow came while in a rampage. After defeating them, Todoroki and Kachin calmed him down. We were walking back to camp as I was back in my human form. I was soon consumed by darkness for some reason. After a minute, I noticed I was in a marble. My marble wasn't the only marble. There were two others. One was Kachin and one was Tokoyama. I started to attack the sides of the marble. The marble started to crack. I got the attention of the others, and they started to attack the sides. I almost broke the marble when I was released and Tamura grabbed me out of nowhere. All it looked like to me was, he grabbed my neck and pulled me through the portal. He grabbed my neck and pulled me through the portal. When I landed on the other side, I saw Shinso restrained and Kachin with a guy with burned purple skin stitched on's hand on his neck also. He pulled Kachin to a chair with restraints and strapped him in. He pulled Kachin to a chair with restraints and strapped him in. After they were done, they turned to me. That guy that claimed to be my father came and hugged me. He then grabbed a first aid kit and started taking care of my injuries. After he took care of my injuries, he grabbed my hand and dragged me to my room. Once we were there, he started asking questions. "Why did you fly away? Why were you with the heroes? Why were you gone so long?" I answered them all honestly to not aggravate him. He nodded and was about to leave the room. I stopped him and asked, "Can Kachin and Shinso stay with me in my room, please?" He nodded, but then said, "Yay, but I'm locking your door till dinner." I nodded and waited till he came back. Once he came back, two villains threw Kachin and Shinso in my room. They left and locked the door. The boys lifted themselves off the floor, which they were thrown onto. Izuku was a little scared that one of them got hurt. He was about to rush over to help them. but they both put their hands up to show they were fine. Katsuki got up first and looked around the room. He noticed he was in a bedroom. Katsuki looked at Izuku before grabbing him. He held his arm before starting to yell at him. "What the hell, Deku?" Izuku looked at him confused as to what he did. "Why the hell did you do that for?" he yelled again. Izuku looked him in the eye and yelled, "Stop it now." The only thought through Katsuki's head was, oh shit, he has never yelled before. When Izuku yelled, it caused Katsuki to lose his grip. Izuku's puff. I had yelled at Kachin, causing him to loosen his grip on my arms. I shifted to my dragon form and flew to my hanging dragon bed. I laid down facing away from them. Shinso was quiet the whole time, probably not sure what to do. I was about to turn around when the door made a unlocking sound. Someone was going to come in the room. I stood up and turned around. Once turned around, I laid back down and watched the room like a hawk. The person came in and was about to say something when Kachin lunged at him. I flew down as quick as possible and enlarged myself. I laid on him before he could attack the person who came in. All I heard after that was laughter. I looked at the person, and it was that one guy that claimed to be Dad. "Hi, Father," I said, pretending to be really happy. I could tell Kachin was getting impatient with me. At this point, I was in human form, just sitting on top of him. "Hi, Izuku. How is my little boy and his friends?" he asked. "We're just fine, but when are we allowed to leave my bedroom?" I asked, trying to hint Kachin and Shinso on what I'm doing. They seemed to catch on. "Well, I'll have to take to all for one before that, but I'll get you guys dinner while you wait." With that, he left and either forgot to lock the door or pulling a trick on us. They looked at me, and I signaled that we shouldn't leave, it may be a trick. While we sat there for a moment, Kachin got up and grabbed a book. He walked over to me, which I was sitting on the bed. After sitting down, he pulled me into his lap. He handed me the book so we could look at it. After a while, I started to get sleepy. Kachin could probably tell. Shinso was still quiet, while shooting glares at Kachin. I finally had fallen asleep, still in Katsuki's lap. Time skip brought to you by my failure of an author. I woke up laying on something soft. I tried to move, but I was held down by something or someone. I was trying to see whom or what was holding me down. I felt pressure on both sides of me. I was about to shift into a small animal to escape when I felt myself get pulled in one direction. I then felt myself pulled into the other direction. I heard a growl from whom sounded like Kachin. I was then roughly pulled away from the other direction. I shifted to a dragon and was about to run when I felt hands wrap around my wings and lift me up. I looked up to see whom was grabbing me. It turned out to be that handyman guy. I heard 2 sets of growls. I looked at the direction it came from. Kachin and Shinso were glaring at handyman. To be honest, while I was away with the heroes, I forgot his name. He looked at Kachin and Shinso and said, "Sorry to take away your snuggle toy, but his father needs him." He said it with so much sarcasm you could feel it. If that's even possible. He turned around me, still in his arms, holding me carefully. He walked to the door and left the two males still on the bed. After what felt like 10 minutes of walking, we stopped in front of a door I knew too well. The fucking training room. Oh fuck was all that played through my head, as I know what was here for. I don't want to train, though it hurt like hell last time. He placed me in the center of the room. My father came out with that dreaded whip. He whipped the ground next to me. What the fuck, don't they want me to trust them, not fear them? He gave me the command to attack Dabai, who I had to fight for training. I was not compliant at first and received a whip to the back. I let out a dragon yelp before charging at Dabai. I enlarged myself and used my elemental dragon slayer quirk. I tried to think of elements to mix together to make the strongest attack. I was running and avoiding attacks from Dabai at the same time, making it hard to think. My father got mad due to the one-sided attacks happening. He whipped me hard, causing an attack from Dabai to hit me. It didn't really affect me. He then punched my dragon form hard enough to launch me back. I spread out my wings only to receive a smack of the whip on them. I fell and got hit hard again by Dabai. I shifted to my cheetah form. I ran as fast as my cheetah form could go and attacked Dabai while avoiding the whip. I ran as fast as my cheetah form could go and attacked Dabai while avoiding the whip. I had gotten in 3 good attacks before finally getting hit by the whip. After getting hit by the whip, Dabai took the opportunity to grab my neck and burn it. I yelped and struggled to get away. He grabbed my face and forced me to inhale smoke. I was getting lightheaded when he dropped my already limp body. I was covered in nasty cuts and burns. Some cuts were very large, some deep, and some just from the whip. I had whip marks all over me. I had realized he obviously hit me more than I even felt. I was about to pass out when I felt someone pick me up. I caught a glimpse of father before passing out entirely. I had woken up with my body on fire with pain. I tried to move, but I was restrained on what looks like a hospital bed. The walls were cracked and water dropped from the ceiling, so I definitely wasn't in a hospital. I tried to move to a more comfortable position. When I moved, pain shot through me instantly. I wouldn't move too much. Your training was taken a little too far. I heard come from the corner of the room. I looked towards the source. Dabai sat in an old chair in the corner. Why am I restrained? I asked with a hint of fear. Don't injure yourself any further. He responded a little too quickly. I started to think about what got me into this mess in the first place because I had nothing better to do. I started thinking about my mother and how I missed everyone. I didn't realize Dabai started to get bored and listened, trying to find out what I was muttering. I mainly was muttering about my mother. He realized I was muttering about my mother that I wasn't even supposed to know. He started putting the pieces together, starting with me running away at the Osje. Dabai stood up quickly and left the room. I hadn't even noticed that was my biggest mistake. I sat in the quietness of the room until the door busted open. Dabai, Toga, Dad, and All for One rushed into the room. Dad and All for One both had syringes. The syringes were different and had different size doses. I started to struggle against the restraints even through the pain in my body. Yoga and Dabai rushed to the sides of the bed and grabbed my arms and legs. They held me down so I wasn't able to move and hurt myself more of them. All for One and Dad started coming closer to the bed as I tried breaking free again. Toga and Dabai held me down with a stronger force than before. Dabai held down one arm while he gagged me with a cloth with his other hand. Dad and All for One got to the sides of the bed. They both lined the needles up to a vein in each arm before plunging the needle into each arm. I yelped and tired to move away from the needles. They started to inject what was in the needles in my arm. My body started to burn as my mind became foggy. I was struggling and trying to scream. My screaming started fading out as I struggled to keep whatever I was thinking on my mind. They took the needles out of my arms as I was getting dizzy. I was struggling to stay awake as the 4 of them just smiled at me. I was losing the battles I was fighting. I had given up on keeping my thoughts, but was determined for some reason to stay awake. I couldn't really remember whom I was and what I was doing here. At the end of the battle, I had lost and succumbed to darkness. We found out why Midoriya's son had ran to the heroes at the Usj attack. He never lost his memories. Well, they are gone now, but he will become our little Namu. We had knocked out and dropped the 2 boys that we had with him in front of the U80 school. They had no use to us villains anymore. Once our little Namu walks up, can start his disciplinary training after testing. Midoriya doesn't get too hurt like he did at his first time with disciplinary training, but that's the problem. He needs to listen, and we must punish him if he doesn't. We still must be careful with him though. We must train him, gain his trust as his new family, and kill All Might. Yeah, he may be a Namu, but he is also Midoriya's son. He not only was a Namu now, but he was the king of Nomas. He can control the other Nomas. He attracts other Nomas to him due to his status. He also will be getting a super regeneration quirk after his disciplinary training. He also has the ability to breed with other male Namu. I'm hoping he doesn't attract them, and they, well, you know what? He is the first Namu to be able to move on his own command. He can think, move, and feel. We need to build a bond with him so he doesn't betray us. While he was unconscious, we gave him a new quirk while he was asleep. It was a healing quirk, only thing is it can only heal other Nomas or people. In the long run, I think this is a bad idea and might go wrong. We are spending so much time and effort into our little Namu King. I just need to believe in what Midoriya is doing. I started to wake from my painful slumber. I can't where I am or why I'm here. I started to get up and stand, but when I went to stand, my wobbly legs and collapsed. As I fell, I felt arms snake around my waist and catch and pull me up as I squeaked before I hit the floor. The sudden movement made me feel sick and bile built in my throat. I tried to get to the bag next to me, but it was too late. I had thrown up on the floor. After I finished throwing up, I went limp in the person's arms that held me. I felt a hand patting my back trying to help. Just wait a little longer before moving so much, Izuku. I don't want you getting hurt or sick again, my son. I turned towards whom had caught me and looked at them. Somehow I felt and knew he was my father. Dad? I replied with a rather raspy, unsure, and shaky voice. Yes, my son. You need more rest, son, now sleep. He replied like it was a command. After he said that, I started to become extremely tired and let myself succumb to the comforting darkness. I felt like I was floating in the darkness after a while. I started to feel like I was there forever. I had a blank mind, nothing was filling it. I tried to think of something but couldn't. It was as if the darkness prevented me from doing so. I started to be able to think again as I felt like something was moving around and touching me. I was confused because I couldn't see still in the darkness, but could somehow feel most things. I started to get more feeling back as I was trying harder to think of more things. The darkness around me started fading due to light. Blurry figures started to flood my vision. When I gained full vision, I built up enough strength to shot up and try and stand. Something restrained me for sitting up fully. I looked around. As I did, the room seemed like a laboratory. I saw people walking around and doing sophisticated things that were too complicated for me. I saw Dad, and once he saw me look at him, he headed in my direction. Once he reached me, he petted my head. It's okay, my son. They are doing tests that will determine if you are healthy or not, he told me. Once he told me that my mind and body relaxed. They finished testing and spoke with father about the results. Once finished, Dad told me to follow him. I got up slowly, but followed with no questions asked. We got to our destination. It looked like a bar. I walked into a bar containing familiar-looking people. I followed father to the bar where he sat on a stool. I stood standing next to him, not really sure what to do. He asked for a drink, then looked at me. You may sit, Izuku. You don't need to stand, he said, gesturing to the stool next to him. I hesitated for a minute before taking a spot on the empty bar stool. I shifted uncomfortably as the bartender came back with father's drink. The bartender looked at me, expecting me to ask for a drink. We just stared at each other for a couple minutes till Dad spoke up again. Izuku, would you like a drink? I just shook my head lightly no. How come he doesn't talk much or do things by himself most the time? A male with light blue hair asked. He is a sentient Namu. To be exact, he is the king of Nomus, and he also gets nervous. He replied very calmly. The word Namu made me uncomfortable. Actually, these people made me uncomfortable also. May I got outside for a moment? I asked Dad. Sure, but just stay out of trouble, he replied without even looking at me. I stood up and walked out the door to be greeted by a wall of cool air. I stepped out farther and looked up at the sky. I feel like I'm forgetting something important. It felt like as if I'm forgetting something important in general. I stared up at the stars till I felt someone grab my shoulder. I looked back at who grabbed my shoulder. It was the bartender. I'm sorry, but I never asked you for your name, I said quietly. I shifted under his grip as he took a minute to register my question. My name is Kurajiri, he replied while looking up at the sky. Kurajiri, why am I so uncomfortable around the people in the bar? I asked, looking back at the sky. I don't know. I'm sorry you feel uncomfortable, but we should get you accustomed to your room. You also need to eat and drink something, he replied. You sound like my mother. I mumbled, but still he heard me because he stifled a laugh. Your name is Izuku, right? He asked. Yay, I replied quietly. Well, Izuku, we should go inside before you get sick, Kurajiri replied before motioning to the door. I nodded and turned. Kurajiri never let go of my shoulder during our talk earlier or now. When we walked in the bar, we had all eyes on us. Did you enjoy your little break? Dad asked as we walked toward him. Yes, thank you, I replied meekly, feeling smaller than I was with all eyes on me. Why don't we show you to your room, Izuku? You will be staying here because I have work to do that I won't be able to take care of you. So make sure you listen to Tamura and Kurajiri. Do what they tell you. Behave for them. If not, they are allowed to punish you any way they seem fit. And be careful. I love you, son. I will see you when I'm done, he said while getting up. I followed as he made his way to a grayish door. He opened it and lightly pushed me in. Get some rest. Kurajiri will give you food and a drink soon. You will get a schedule of what we are going to do for the week. When you have free time, you will either be in the bar, training room, or here, nowhere else. The blue-haired male replied before closing the door. He opened it again and popped his head in quickly. Also, my name is Tamura, but for now sleep, he said as I was overcome by black. Tamura's pav brought to you by my tiredness. Izuku just dropped to the floor after I told him to rest. I slapped my head, realizing that he was a Namu and would follow my commands. I picked up his limp body and placed him on the bed. Once I placed him on the bed, I heard stomping and struggling. Kurajiri teleported into the room and locked the door. He didn't say that Izuku was that Namu. He mumbled as he stood in front of me and Izuku. The door smashed open as a Namu came through in a rage. Kurajiri, what the fuck is happening? I yelled. Izuku is a male Namu that can reproduce with its own gender, he replied. The Namu launched at us. Eyes looked on Izuku. I grabbed Izuku as Kurajiri teleported us. We looked around to see where we are and saw we teleported right in the middle of a villain's fight with All Might. We stared dumbfounded at the fight. The fight ended with All Might winning. He spotted us while turning around. I forgot that Izuku was still unconscious on my shoulder. All Might had a pissed-off face. He disappeared and I felt Izuku's weight gone. Kurajiri tried to get Izuku back as I distracted All Might. All Might then handed Izuku to Death Arms and said something to him. He nodded, then ran off. Shit, Sensei is going to kill me. No, Hisashi is going to kill me before Sensei, I yelled. I woke up to feel constant movement. I opened my eyes slightly to see caution tape. No, it's someone's arm. I tried to shift, but his grip won't permit me to move. He looked down to see me awake. Why am I in this guy's arms? I looked up at his face as he looked down at me. I heard a large smashing sound behind us. I tried to look back, but his arm was in the way. He ran into big gates saying Yua on them. Shit, he yelled as he looked back at whatever was making that noise. Then tons of alarms started going off. People rushed out and saw the same thing this guy saw. A hobo-looking man came up to us. Izuku, he asked. I looked at him confused. Do I know you? I asked. Yea, but now is not the time, he replied quickly. Something then slammed into the guy holding me and grabbed me. I looked at whomever grabbed me, and it was a weird being. He held me protectively and stopped fighting the people. He sat down and placed me in his lap. When someone came close, he would roar at them. However that worked. He held my feet, which were bare. He shifted me to a position that was so comfortable that I feel asleep. what the picture looks like. Time skip brought to you by me having no homework. I woke up to hear a loud commotion. I sat up in the being's lap and yawned. There were a lot more people than before. I looked at a big blonde man. I asked quietly, almost too quiet. WW, what ISG going on? The blonde was surprised. Izuku, please come here away from the Namu. The blonde said. What is wrong with the Namu that I need to leave him? Do I know you? How do you know my name? I asked after gathering my bearings and tilted my head confused. Izuku, you don't remember us? The hobo-looking man asked while standing next to the blonde. I nodded my head no. I turned to the being they called Namu. I was confused. Didn't Dad call me a Namu too? I moved my feet from the Namu's hands and stood up. The Namu stood up behind me. I walked towards the blonde, but he grabbed me quickly. He pulled me away from the Namu without being told to. Namu was enraged at the blonde that grabbed me. He roared, which scared me, and he could tell from me flinching. The Namu abruptly stopped, but looked like it was waiting for something. Didn't Dad call me the King of Nomus? I tried to push away from the blonde, but he just held me there. Let go, I said sternly, trying to get away. Young Midoriya, I am not able to do that, he replied, turning around and throwing me on his shoulder. I shifted into a cat and jumped off his shoulders. I moved quickly to get to the Namu, but was wrapped by something. The Namu rushed toward me when I was yanked back. I landed in the hobo's arms. I bit his arm to try to get away, but he didn't move. Soon a cloth was thrown on my head, making me feel calmer. I heard fighting, so I started trying to get the cloth off. I shifted into my dragon form and broke free from the man's grasp. I saw the Namu was badly hurt during the fight with the blonde. I ran at the blonde and attacked him, getting him away from Namu. After I did, I ran back to Namu and started healing him. I enlarged my dragon form and surrounded myself around the Namu, protecting him. What the fuck, said the blonde. It's okay, Izuku, it's just a misunderstanding. We thought the Namu was trying to harm you, the hobo said. I let myself decrease in size, then landed on the Namu. I looked at them suspiciously. Izuku, please trust us, the blonde said. I jumped off Namu and shifted to my human form. I motioned the Namu to follow, and he did. The blonde looked confused. The blonde turned around as the alarms turned off. He started walking to the building. What is your name, sirs? I asked the blonde and hobo. All Might and Aizawa. Don't you remember Izuku? I nodded my head no. We walked into a classroom filled with students. The Namu was still following me, and I motioned him to sit. He sat due as I heard gasps. I turned around as I saw a boy. My head started to hurt as this started to come back to me. I started grabbing my head in pain. I fell to the floor as the Namu got up, helping me not hit the floor. He lifted me into his lap as things entered my head. It became too painful as I paced it out. I woke up shortly after with my head throbbing. I moved to sit up in the Namu's lap. I looked up to see scared faces of the Yua Hero course class staring at me. What happened? I asked All Might. You passed out after grabbing your head, he said, startled. I thought of what the villains had done to me. I started to cry in the Namu's arms. I whipped around and gripped the Namu in a tight hug. The Namu didn't return the hug till a couple minutes later. He started to rub my back. I heard footsteps behind me. Izuku, why are you crying? Ida asked. I'm a Namu. I'm the king of Nomus, I whispered meekly in the Namu's chest. Please speak up, young Midoriya, we can't hear you. I hugged the Namu tighter. I'm a NN Namu. I'm TT, the KK king of N Nomus, I repeated, not controlling my stutter. Izuku's puff. I looked at them with my tearful eyes. All Might, may I please leave now? I asked, looking at my lap. Young Midoriya, I'm sorry, but no, we need to learn more about your situation. Please stay, All Might said while getting up. He walked towards me as I became uneasy. The Namu held me tighter as All Might came closer. Namu started to growl at All Might, causing him to stop. Young Midoriya, I knows you're scared because of your situation, but please calm down, we are not going to hurt you. I tried to relax. I looked at Namu as he looked at me. All Might Namu won't get taken away, will he? I asked, still looking at Namu. Yes, he will, I'm sorry, Izuku, he said sadly. I stood up quickly. No, you can't take him away, he didn't do anything wrong, I yelled, alerting Namu. To take him, you go through me, I yelled, throwing my arms out. Young Midoriya, please calm down, we can try and let the Namu stay with you, but I can't promise anything, All Might said, standing in front of Class 1A. Either he stays or I fight to save him, I said with a growl. I'm sorry, young Midoriya, All Might said, looking me straight in the eyes. I signaled the Namu to start leaving the room as I backed up. I watched All Might's every move as I backed up. Once out the door, All Might jolted forward as I turned and ran. Namu was just behind me as I was making my way out. Alarms started up as we got to the front gates. I shifted to my dragon form and grabbed Namu. As I lifted off, All Might grabbed my tail. I whipped him off as I got higher in the air, flapping my wings as fast as I could. I got over the gates. Once out, I flew to an open area and landed. I dropped Namu and shifted to human again. We sat under a tree and leaned on the trunk. I snuggled to the Namu as he held me in his arms protectively. I'm sorry for causing you trouble, Namu. We should call you something different, I said, drifting to sleep. Namu's Pav wasn't expecting that. My king was sleeping on my lap after fighting a human. Ever since I meet him, I started thinking for myself. Humans are probably now after us. First it is the people that made us, now the people trying to take me away from my king. As we sat under the tree, a gateway started to open. I lifted my king up and moved away from the tree. The people that made us came out. I back up before turning to run. Where do you think you two are going? It took forever to try and location your asses, so stay still, a guy with hands on him said. I looked behind me, then ran. Kurogiri, isn't a normal Namu supposed to listen? Get back here, the guy yelled. Izuku's puff. I woke up to movement again. I remember falling asleep with Namu against a tree. Get back here, I heard someone yell. I shifted in Namu's arms. I looked over his shoulder and saw Tamura, Kurogiri, Dad, and Dabai. Izuku, please come back, Dad yelled. I looked at Namu as he continued to run with me, now over his shoulder. Kurogiri and Dabai cut us off from the front as Dad and Tamura came from behind. Stay still now, you two, Dad yelled madly. Namu stopped trying to find a way out. Dabai tried burning Namu with his fire, but missed as Namu ran to the left. I just stared at his back as he ran. Izuku, stop, I heard All Might yell in front of us. Shit, I mumbled. Dabai had our right side, Kurogiri on our left, All Might in front of us, and Dad and Tamura behind us. Why? Are you after Izuku? All Might demanded. Izuku belongs to us, so back off. I will not let my son be taken by you heroes, my dad yelled. Izuku doesn't belong to you villains, All Might yelled, getting closer to us. I pushed off Namu's shoulders and into his arms. Namu, I don't know what to do, I said in a whisper. I started to shiver from fear, confusion, and overwhelming myself. Young Midoriya, I need you to come to me quickly, please, All Might begged. Izuku, come here now. You listen to your father only, Dad demanded. I grabbed my head as my shivering became more visible. The Namu held me tight and protectively to calm me down, but nothing helped. I moved out of Namu's arms as the villains attacked All Might. I motioned the Namu to follow as we ran again. We got far from the fight when Kurogiri showed up. Young Midoriya, please go with All Might, it's a lot safer. Coming with us or staying out here is going to be more harmful than anything good. Tamura and your father is most likely going to punish you and kill the Namu. And the punishment might have you close to death. Please go with All Might, Kurogiri begged. But All Might said he is going to take Namu away from me. He didn't do anything wrong, so why take him from me? He was the one that saved me from both villains and heroes, I said pleadingly. It's fine if you two protect each other. You'll be fine, just go with All Might, Kurogiri demanded. No, we won't go with either of you, I yelled madly. Namu, please make Izuku unconscious, he isn't going to listen. It's for his own good. Please Izuku, I want to see you safe. Kurogiri begged again. I am not leaving Namu, I said madly. Namu walked towards me as I backed up. Third person puff. Namu, stop please, we don't need the hero's help, we just need to leave please, Izuku begged as he backed into a tree and the Namu bent to his level. The Namu brought his arms out as Izuku started to panic. Namu pulled Izuku into a hug, causing the little king to struggle. Namu held him there till he calmed down. Izuku hugged the Namu back. Izuku went limp after a blow to the neck. Namu carefully placed the king on his shoulder. He turned to Kurogiri as Kurogiri made a portal. Kurogiri gestured to the portal before the Namu entered. The Namu landed next to All Might as Kurogiri teleported the villains away. Why did you run away from us, young Midoriya? He mumbled. The Namu grabbed a stick and wrote something in the dirt. He was scared he would lose me. It read. All Might looked confused and stressed. We need to get back to Ua. Just a warning, we will be strapping Izuku to a med bed with anti-quirk cuffs. If you fight, we will remove you and put you in a cell. To be continued. Sorry for not updating. I was studying for exams or working on my art journal. I didn't add skin color because I don't have the right color. I probably won't be posting this week because exams start on Tuesday. Hope you enjoyed. Alpha Deku. All Might and Namu got back to Ua and headed to the infirmary. All Might strapped Izuku to the bed when they arrived. Namu had flinched and looked away when All Might did. All Might left to inform his class that they will have a study hall because he had important business to attend to. Namu watched his king as he started to stirring and starting to wake up. Recovery Girl walked into the room with All Might. Izuku shot up, struggling against his restraints. He was panicked and looked around the room with fear in his eyes. Namu rushed over to try and calm Izuku down, but he was too panicked to have anything help. Izuku stuttered something while looking at Namu. PPR Prince, are you okay? Izuku didn't even register what he said before his face scrunched up in pain. Namu, now named Prince, knew something was wrong with his king. His king started his heat, so Prince looked for something to write with. He found paper and a pen and quickly wrote before leaving the room in a panic. All Might read the paper before handing it to Recovery Girl. All Might came closer to Izuku and removed the restraints. Izuku instantly curled up and felt discomfort. All Might became very protective of Izuku before telling Recovery Girl to watch over Izuku. All Might headed to Class 1 and knowing Prince would be there. Izuku's puff. I panicked seeing myself stuck to a bed. All Might and Recovery Girl were watching as Prince was trying to calm me down. I didn't realize, but I asked Prince if he was okay using the name I was thinking of calling him. My body started hurting bad and getting hot. All I felt was pain and discomfort. Prince wrote something on a piece of paper, then left quickly. All Might came and removed the restraints, then left. I curled up instantly, trying to stop the pain. Recovery Girl came over and said she was going to go get me food. Recovery Girl came back with a tray of food and placed it on the table next to me. Izuku, please try and eat or drink something. You need nutritions. Recovery Girl pleaded while trying to get me to uncurl a bit. She grabbed a glass and held it up where I can see it. I uncurled a bit, and she stuck the straw into my mouth. I took a sip before curling up again and panting. Izuku, you need to drink and eat more, she said, and tried again, but this time I refused to uncurl. A loud smash interrupted Recovery Girl's attempts. She put the stuff down and stood in front of me and watched the door. The door was pushed open suddenly and alarms went off just as fast. Recovery Girl was shoved into the wall and knocked unconscious. I felt a hand sneak under my shirt and lift me up. I came face to face with another Namu other than Prince. The Namu licked my face and neck, which made the heat and pain slightly go away. The Namu grabbed my shirt with his free hand and started to pull it off. Once it was off, he started licking my chest as I pushed away with my hands. The Namu growled and tried biting my neck, but I pushed away and he bit my side. I cried out in pain and tried using my quirks, but they wouldn't work. All Might and Prince ran into the room as the Namu snapped one of my arms, causing me to cry out even louder. All Might grabbed me from the Namu and punched it back a few feet. All Might rushed out of the room as Prince grabbed Recovery Girl and ran after us. The Namu was close on our tail, as All Might had cradled me in his arms. We reached the Class 1 door, and All Might pushed it open. He rushed in and gentle put me against the far wall. Prince followed suit and placed Recovery Girl next to me. All Might and Prince got in a defensive stance, alerting the class that something was terribly wrong. Kachin ran over to my side and tried getting me to uncurl and show him my arm. Mr. Aizawa woke up and noticed the chaos. He got up and stood in front of Recovery Girl, and I because All Might told him to. The Namu smashed through the doors as other pro heroes started attacking it. The Namu's eyes were locked on one thing, and that was me. Kachin finally forced me to uncurl and saw my broken arm. He then noticed the large bite on my side before I curled up again. The pros and Prince captured the Namu as Aizawa and Todoroki protected us from the villains that had appeared at one point during the fight. Kachin and Aizawa were trying to hold off my father, while All Might held off All for One. Toga and Dabai were fighting all the extra pro heroes and the rest of Class 1A. A kid with a gas mask came and sent gas towards Kachin, Aizawa, and I. Kachin lost consciousness as I started to lose mine. Aizawa tried to keep fighting, but he collapsed as Father, pick me up. Mustard, grab that kid and I'll grab Eraserhead, and we will retreat. My father ordered before picking Mr. Aizawa up also. It'll be all right, Izuku. We will help you get out of your pain and discomfort. My father whispered into my ear as I drift to my dreams. I woke up slowly and felt weight on my limbs. I looked around to see a dark room. Off on the side by a bookcase was Mr. Aizawa and Kachin. I tried to get up, but I was chained to a bed. I looked around and realized this was the bedroom the villains gave me. The door opened and Dad walked in. Hey son, how are you feeling? He asked while walking over. Fine, I guess. I replied, realizing I had Enrollment 4 in my arm. Good, the suppressants worked. Now are you going to behave, or are we going to have to take away your friends? He asked. No, I was just scared something bad was going to happen to Prince, so I ran. He just followed my orders, I said. Prince? He asked, confused as he removed most the chains. I named the Namu Prince, I said as he had an O face. I sat up as the chain on my neck made a clunk noise. Can you put Eraserhead and Kachin on the bed, please? They look uncomfortable against the bookcase, I said, and he nodded and picked them up. Mr. Aizawa started to stir as Dad adjusted the chain on my neck. Mr. Aizawa had a chain on his right ankle and Kachin had one on his left. Mr. Aizawa woke up and looked around till his eyes landed on Dad, who was holding my arm roughly and taking the Roman 4 out. Don't touch him, Mr. Aizawa yelled, grabbing me and pulling me towards him. What are you going to do? He is my son after all, Dad said on a dark voice, making me tremble. I'll be back with your dinner in 2 hours, so sit tight. Izuku, you're getting another dose, then too, so don't even try and fight. He warned, making me press against Mr. Aizawa. I still can't use my quirk, so I still have my heat. Yes, sir, I said quickly. Once he left, Mr. Aizawa pulled me closer to him. It's okay, he said, petting my hair. Mr. Aizawa, are you all right? I asked, relaxing into his arms. I should be asking you that question. What did he have in that Roman 4? Mr. Aizawa asked. A suppressant helping my heat, I guess. At least that's what he told me. I said, looking at Kachin. When do you think he will wake up? I asked. Soon, if I woke up this soon, he said. After that was when Kachin started to stir. He blinked and looked around. He looked over and saw me and Mr. Aizawa sitting together. Kachin grabbed me from Mr. Aizawa and placed me in his lap. I'm not some toy to play with, I grumbled as they started to fight over me. I had enough and broke out of their grip as they fought over me. I walked over to the bookcase and grabbed a book. I went to go to a chair by the door, but my chain wouldn't let me. Mr. Aizawa and Kachin were whispering and looked over at me a couple of times while talking. I sat on the end of the bed and started read. All of a sudden, I felt hands wrap around my waist and pulled me towards them. I had no way to escape. I had Mr. Aizawa on my left and Kachin on my right holding me. Down on the bed. They hugged me, and I realized that it helped release the stress that was slowly building because of the situations. You should really learn to release your stress on something, because you still have the habit of reading and writing notes when you're very stressed. Kachin said, rubbing my head. The warmth between our bodies that it lulled me to sleep. Aizawa's puff. We trapped Izuku in a hug against the bed because he was really stressed. Bakugo explained to me what he does when he is really stressed. Well, what should we do? We are chained to a wall and Izuku is sleeping, I said. We really can't do anything until we know how to get out of here, Bakugo said as we placed Izuku onto the bed out of our arms. We just sat there for what felt like forever. The door opened and a guy with patches stapled to his face came in. Well, look who we have here. He laughed. It was the guy I fought with at the training camp. He walked towards the bed and Bakugo, and I got up and guarded Izuku protectively over Izuku. What do you want? I yelled. Just checking out our new guests. Also, I would behave, or I will tell them to not give you dinner, he said with a smirk as Izuku started to awaken. So our little king awakens, he said, smirking. Izuku's puff. So our little king awakens, I heard someone say. I sat up and looked at what was going on. Dabai was looking at me with a smirk. My dad opened the door with an Roman 4 stand following behind him. Dabai walked towards Mr. Aizawa and Kachin. Are you sure you want to fight and protect him just from a dose of medicine he needs? He asked. Dabai used the moment that they were thinking in to restrain them. Now, Izuku, are you going to fight back too? My father asked, prepping a needle. He walked towards me and I just shook my head and backed up till my back hit the headrest. I tried launching of the bed away from him, but he grabbed my chain on my neck and pulled hard, launching me back. I landed right in front of him. He held me down and grabbed chains that I had first woken up in and tied me down. Now you are just not behaving anymore. Do I need to take away your little friends away? You know Tamura would love to just kill Eraserhead, my dad said. No, please don't take them away. I was just scared. I hate needles, I said, lying right through my teeth. My father held my arm and shoved the needle in. I winced and started to tremble, feeling the liquid spread through my arm and body, and it started to hurt. I felt the heat and discomfort came back. My father's face became one of confusion while mine was pain, and I pulled on the chains. Why aren't they working? My father yelled. I don't know. They were earlier. Dabai panicked as he watched me. The pain started to get worse and tears fell down my face. They are only making it worse. We need to do something, Dad yelled while being by my side. We need to do that, Dabai said. I refused to let Inamu rape my son, my dad yelled, making the three of us to thrash and try to break free. My father and Dabai got into a big fight, and in the end Dad picked up Dabai and threw him out. No, Namu is going to rape my son. We will find another way to end your heat, my dad said, removing the Roman 4 to stop making it worse. He undid the chains and picked me up. He unlocked the ones on Mr. Aizawa and Kachin. Follow, but be quiet. Lock me up, I don't care, but at least help my son. I shouldn't have let them turn him into this. My poor son. My poor son, he said, holding me close. All I did was whimper as pain throbbed through my body, and my father looked down at me with guilt. The three of them snuck out through the back quietly with me still in Dad's arms. As they walked through alleys, the pain just worsened. I cried out as a wave of pain hit me hard. SHHH, I know I'm sorry. This is my fault. I shouldn't have let them do this. I should have accepted you for who you were. My father whispered to me. They came out of an alley near Ua as I started to jolt. They broke out into a run to get to the gates. Mr. Aizawa gave Dad visitors permits. They rushed inside and into the infirmary. They busted through the door and scared everyone in the room. All Might, Present Mike, Nezu, Todoroki, and Recovery Girl was all in the room. Young Bakugo, young Izuku, and Aizawa, are you okay? All Might asked. No, Izuku's heat got 10 times worse. Mr. Aizawa said, grabbing me and placing me on a bed, setting up in Roman 4 and restraining my arms and legs. What was in the suppressants, and what do most of them do? Mr. Aizawa yelled. Hisashi lists off ingredients and doesn't know what they do. We had scientists make them. I just know what's in them. Dad yelled back. I cried out again in pain as another wave hit me hard. What is another way besides that to be done? Mr. Aizawa asked. Nothing, and I won't allow that to be done. My father yelled as he rubbed my neck. How long are these heats supposed to last? Nezu ached. About 7-8 days. My father said. It only has been 3. All Might replied. Hearing this, I whimpered and scared to feel this pain and discomfort for another 4-5 days. It hurts as is, and is slowly getting worse. Well, what is that you're all talking about? Present Mike asked. They are saying to have someone deflower Izuku. My father said. What do you mean deflower Izuku? Present Mike asked again. He means for someone to fuck Izuku. Mr. Aizawa yelled madly. For someone to fuck Izuku. Mr. Aizawa yelled madly at Present Mike. I already said we are not doing that no matter what. My father yelled at Mr. Aizawa. I gripped the sheets under my hands trying to curl up but can't. Out of nowhere the door opened and a lady came running in. She immediately rushed over to me before putting her hand on my chest. Everyone in the flipped and started yelling at her demanding who she was or to get away from me. The heat, pain, and discomfort went away, and she started to release my restraints. I slowly sat up with her help. She seemed familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. Where is Prince? Where is he? I asked as everyone was trying to get what just happened through their minds. The lady behind me tapped my shoulder, so I turned to look at her. I am Prince Izuku. I am female, and was made to get you through your heats as a backup. When you had your first one, I became sentient and broke out of where I was held. She said, and I hugged her. I am sorry, I didn't say anything as I rushed in. I had to help Izuku. She explained before helping me stand and walk to everyone else. Well, now we have that situation sorted out, what do we do about Hisashi? All Might ask. I was then led to class by Mr. Aizawa, Katsuki, Todoroki, and Prince. That is my story on how I became a quirkless nobody to a hero in training for the next generation of heroes.